In New York, 1965, Bobby Fischer faced Paul Benko in a battle that began quietly, but ended with a crushing kingside attack that left Benko no way out. Fischer begins with pawn to e4, immediately staking claim in the center. Benko mirrors with pawn to e5. Knight to f3, attacking the pawn, and Benko develops his knight to c6. Bishop to b5, the iconic Ruy Lopez. Benko pushes a6, forcing Fischer's bishop back to a4. Knight to f6 from Benko, and Fischer castles early, aiming for safety. Benko plays bishop to e7, preparing to castle. Fischer brings his rook to e1, reinforcing the center. Benko expands with pawn to b5, chasing the bishop to b3. Pawn to d6, a calm move from Benko, locking the center. Fischer responds with c3, setting up d4. Benko castles, and Fischer pushes h3, stopping any back rank pins. Benko retreats his knight to b8, a strange move, but aiming to reroute. Fischer seizes the center with pawn to d4. Knight to d7 from Benko, and Fischer surprises with knight to h4, an aggressive flank move, looking toward f5. Benko places his knight on b6, pressuring the bishop on a4. Fischer develops knight to d2. Benko pushes c5, striking in the center. Fischer takes on c5, forcing a structural decision. Pawns are traded. Knight to f5. Fischer's piece jumps deep into enemy territory. Benko exchanges bishop for knight, but this gives Fischer the bishop pair. After exchanging his bishop for a knight, Benko places his queen on c7. Pawn to g4. Fischer is launching a pawn storm. Benko replies with h6, stopping g5. Fischer pushes h4, showing clear intentions to attack. Benko counters with c4, shutting the queen side but leaving the king side exposed. Knight to h7 from Benko, eyeing g5, but Fischer calmly plays knight to f3. Benko plays f6, trying to restrict the white pieces, but it slightly weakens the dark squares. Fischer centralizes with knight to d2, and Benko brings his rook to d8. Queen to f3. Fischer is now aiming straight at the king side. Benko plays h5, advancing pawns but leaving weaknesses. Pawn takes on h5. Here, it's clear that Fischer is aiming to attack along the g-file. The knight jumps to d5, eyeing the f for square. Fischer's knight moves to e4, holding the center. Benko brings his knight to f4, trying to find counterplay. Bishop takes on f4, pawn recaptures, and Fischer moves his king to h1, stepping away from danger and connecting rooks. King to h8, Benko tucks his king away to safety. Rook to g1, doubling rooks soon, Benko brings his rook to f7 for defense. Rook to g6, Fischer invades, Benko plays bishop to d6. Rook to g1, tripling on the g-file, Benko retreats bishop to f8. Pawn to h6, a dagger in Benko's position, Benko responds with queen to e5. Queen to g4 from Fischer, coordinating with the rooks, Benko moves rook to d7. Pawn to f3, Fischer calmly fixes his structure. Benko plays bishop to c5. But Fischer's knight lands on c5, taking the piece. Queen takes knight, rook to g7, Fischer grabs material while keeping pressure. Rook takes rook. Pawn recaptures. And pawn to g7 check, Benko's king is trapped in the corner. Queen to g6, rook to d8, desperate defense. Bishop to e4, queen to c8. And here comes Fischer's brilliant strike, queen to e8, check, Benko resigns immediately. If the game had continued, it might have gone like this. This pawn would keep marching forward and eventually promote.